What's up, guys? So in this episode, we're going to dive in with Tyrus Shivers, who is an integrator that I met through some EOS training. And him and I have stayed in touch over the years, and he is a wildly experienced EOS guy, understands the world, but more than that, he's actually done it in real businesses. He's actually run the systems, built the companies, and so his insight is super, super valuable, and he knows what it takes to work with really high-level visionaries, where maybe you don't have 90 minutes for your L10. You've got the visionary for 10 minutes because they're on to the next thing. And so you're going to want to tune in for this one. We cover a lot of great stuff from his personal experience and how the military played into that, all the way to working with visionaries like Eric Thomas and other influencers like Coach Prime. And so there's a lot of great stuff in here around EOS fundamentals that I think you'll find really valuable.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. Today, I've got a very special guest who I met when I was first getting started in some of the formalized EOS training, certifications, and background. Tyrus and I were in a group together, and Tyrus, you actually mentioned something in the group, and I went, wait a minute, I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know what you're saying. We were in like a breakout for an EOS certification, and you mentioned something about a visionary that you were working with. One of his goals was to win a Nobel Peace Prize. And I said, I only know one guy who talks like that. I only know one guy who's ever said that. And it was E.T. or Eric Thomas, for people who don't know. And I think I messaged you on the side, and I was like, do you work for E.T.? And you were like, yeah. We just kind of jived after that. And we've kind of stayed in touch over the last couple of years. But Tyrus Shivers, everybody. EOS integration, implementation was kind of how we hit it off. And so welcome, man.
Thank you, Ian. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So give us just kind of a brief background. I mean, how did you get into this? What were you doing before? And then, what does that look like to get you to now? I always kind of go off of the premise of like, tell us a little bit about where you're at right now. Take us back history-wise, how you got here, and then give us the big leap to what's coming down the pipe in the future.
Yeah, I love it. So today you could classify me as a serial entrepreneur, but I sit in the operations seat of every business that I'm associated with or that I'm a partner in. And so right now, today, I'm working on building an educational-based platform for capital raising. My partners and I are teaching businesses how to raise capital and not bootstrap, not get declined by banks and other lenders, and just show them that with the Jobs Act that was passed in 2014, there are many ways that you can raise capital for your business and go public, which was never as easy as it is now. Back in the day, it was a lot to go public. It seems so elusive, but small businesses can do it today. And so that's what I'm working on currently. How did I get here? Man, it would take hours to go through my full background and all the things that I did. So I will give you a Campbell's soup version. Everybody knows what Campbell's soup is. You put it in the microwave, boom, you got a minute and a half intro. So I'm going to give you the Campbell's soup version. I was born in a small town in Alabama. And when I say small, no street lights, dirt roads, cow fields, cotton fields, peanuts. There was nothing there. No opportunity. There were only hard jobs, meaning you were either farming or factory working, paper mills, wood mills, and all of my family worked 12 to 15 hours a day, and we still didn't have any money. And so at a young age, I realized that, I don't want to work hard like this. Like, I would have to go out and help do things. And I'm like, I don't think this is for me. And so my great grandfather, who I walk by his house every day going to school, he always said to us, learn all you can because you're going to need it. And I really, really took that in. And I still go after learning all I can. And it comes from a man who was chopping cotton when he was 8 years old. His father had died. He didn't learn how to read until he got in the Army, like in the 1940s. And so it comes from someone who lived a life and they knew education was key. So fast forward through high school, I did exceptionally well. I did well in college until I lost my scholarship for pledging. So I left college, went back home, and then I was doing nothing. My father was in prison. My mom had moved, and my grandma was like, "You can't stay here and not work." And so I had some odd end jobs. I did HVAC with my cousins. I worked at movie gallery, no longer exists for those of you who may be too young. It's like, what is movie gallery? Think Blockbuster. Um, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And so my uncle-in-law, my aunt's husband, he had been in the Air Force for like 15 years. And he came from Trinidad, dirt poor, shack, no nothing. And he always said that the Air Force had been good to him. He had got multiple degrees. So I went to the Air Force. I was a signals intelligence analyst, copied Morse code. And then my whole life was, I'm going to go to OTS, become an officer, do 20, 30 years, retire. But then I was, went to the doctor. They said I had a condition. And then as I go through that process, I found out that I have a disability that's not compatible with the military. So I was medically retired in 2009. From there, I went into government contracting. And then I started at the bottom. IT work, I mean, just taking old computers, refreshing them, taking the hard drives out, taking the memory out, and stacking them. So back to hard work. I was supposed to get away from that, but now I'm loading up pallets of 200-300 machines every day. And I worked my way up from that physical work to system administration, infrastructure engineering, all the way up. And as I got a good government job, as they say, make it over six figures, I realized that that wouldn't make me wealthy. Like, I'm still getting a paycheck, but that's not wealth. So I started Googling. I was like, how can I get wealthy? Real estate came up. And so I found a meeting local to me. The BWI meetup was what it was called. Went to that real estate meeting, and then I meet a guy named Kenny Gills, and he's passed away. He became my first mentor. He was everything I wanted to be. Multiple businesses. He talked about scaling. I had that mentality of scaling and how to do multiple things and how to run different. He taught all of that. He worked at the White House. He was an IT guy. So I'm like, okay, he is in that trajectory that I'm in. So if you're listening, take a note right there. When you're looking to go somewhere, find somebody that's in that pathway that can be your first mentor. And so as Kenny mentored me, he helped me establish a property management company. I went from 0 to 200 units in like 6 months. And so we were doing really big things there. And once he passed away, I got into construction, flipping houses, rentals, all using the same system. Lost a lot of money, made a lot of money. I was actually on a show last night, and I told them, like, out of 50 projects, 60 projects I did, I lost money on 50 of them because it was going so fast, and it was just money in, money out. And that led me to coaching. And then as I went into coaching, because people wanted to know, well, how'd you build these businesses so fast? How'd you hit 7 figures so fast? So I started coaching, got into personal development, wanted to become a speaker, which is how I got with ET. And so I went to his speaking boot camp. I joined his extreme execution group and then his community, Breathe University. And I do what Tyrus does. Wherever I go, I add value. And so my name started circulating through the communities, and they're like, who is this guy? How does he know this stuff? And why is he pointing these gaps out? Because that's what I also do, is I find gaps and then I solve them. And so I became their operations manager. And then eventually I became directly the person with ET, his integrator. He would give me the vision, and then I would make that vision come to life. And from there, I started doing fractional integrator work with different people. That's how I came into EOS. And I was actually introduced to EOS right when it first came out, but I didn't really dive into it until much later. So I'll pause there, because that is how I went from where I am today all the way up through it, all the different little components of things that I've done along the way.
Yeah, dude, so good. Like, I didn't even know some of the real estate background you had. That's perfect for this. Man, okay, bunch of different directions I want to take this, but first, let's go back to the real estate stuff. Talk to me about the property management, flipping homes, if you could go back, how would you do it differently now, knowing what you know now?
That's such a loaded question. I wouldn't do half of the stuff I did back then if I did it now. And I'm going to tell you why. Again, mentorship and listening to the right people. So there's a guy, he was a hard money lender. And as I was building this property management company, because, real estate's small. When you get in a group and a core of individuals, everybody kind of knows everybody. And he got wind of who I was, and he saw how I built it. And he said, you know what? I want to build my hard money business, and I want to go digital. And he was doing at the time about 10 million gross, a million net. And so he wanted to grow that up. And I came in, and that's where I actually started doing my first operations work for him. It was integrator work, but I wasn't calling it integrator work.
Sure.
And you asked me, what would you do different? I would listen to Brooke. His name is Brooke Kane. Brooke said, you're too smart to do property management. And at that time, I was telling him, Brooke, I'm going to be a licensed contractor. I'm going to do my own flips, and I'm going to do work for other people. He said, don't do it. And I did it anyway. So if I could do something different, I would listen to him, because a lot of the money I lost was not on my own projects. It was on work for other people. It was them doing change orders and me not charging. It was them wanting different materials than I had quoted them for, or what we scoped out. It was me hiring the wrong people. And since I have always been at multiple things, not paying enough attention. So the guys would text me and say, hey, the job's done. Send me a picture. We know how that works. I can send you a picture of that room, but not that room. And I would pay them. And then when I would go check, it's like, okay, the work's not done. And of course, they've disappeared. And so I would have to repay. And in real estate, every time you go from one contractor to the next, he's going to say, it's a lot of work. I got to go behind this person. I don't know what they did. So they're going to charge you even more. So that's how I lost all of that money on those projects. And the thing that I did I never went back to the client and made them eat the cost, even though I could have. I ate up all those costs. When things got stolen, I paid for it. Because we're working in Baltimore and in Baltimore City, it's rough. If you're in the wrong part, you leave your walls open, they're going to take all your electrical. If you don't put cages over your HVAC, your units are gone. You're outdoors. So things that I would do differently, one, I wouldn't become a licensed contractor. I still hold my license. I don't necessarily believe I would become a licensed realtor either. I still hold that license. I think I would sit in the seat of, and we probably will get into this later, but I want everybody to think about, when you're sitting at a table with people, you got to recognize what the seats are in the table. And so I was always sitting in the seat of the operator, but I noticed, and this, the hard money lender makes almost as much money as the flipper makes if the flipper is not careful. And they may make more with less headache. So now if I had to go back to real estate and the property management, I would figure out, how do I sit in the right seat that has the least amount of headache?
Mm-hmm. It reminds me, there's a Jim Rohn quote where he says, learn how to become a lender, not a borrower.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's like, man, better. And when you look at that scenario, it's like the flipper's the borrower, hard money guy's the lender. It's like the advice has been around for years. Tell me a little bit, like, what did you learn through that in terms of how you would now maybe implement some like trust but verify mentality, right? Like, we can't go behind everybody and check on every single thing, especially now where a lot of the work is done remotely. How would you implement some of that like trust but verify mentality to know that it's getting done?
I love it. So Jay Scott was another good friend of mine, early mentor back in the days. He was huge on Bigger Pockets at one time. Jay Scott was the person who I knew had the most structure in the business. And I may quote it wrong, not quote it, but I know he was a project manager. I believe it was at Microsoft.
Okay.
So if it wasn't at Microsoft, whatever, he was a project manager. He took that background and he brought it to real estate. And so if I did something different, it would be to mimic or mirror what he did. So walk through the house. And when you set up the project and the schedules and what it should look like in the examples, see, the issue is we like to delegate, but we don't actually delegate. Delegation is giving someone else control over the outcome. we like to decide. And deciding is, I tell you to do something, but I'm going to decide how you do everything. What I would do now is I would set parameters, whether it's with construction guys or whether it's with virtual employees or VAs across the world. You set up the system and the framework and the process, the SOPs, and then you set up decision-making parameters within the documentation so they're not coming back to you asking you every single thing. So your paint color should be standard. Your carpet should be standard. Everything should be standard. That way there are no questions. And now the verification becomes easy because if they follow all the process, you're just doing an overview and a walk around instead of having to figure out, okay, what did you do here? What did you do there? Because you made up half the work. So for me, and I'm building this now into all of the businesses that I work with, more structure with the leeway of, yes, you can make decisions, but within these parameters.
Yeah, we call them decision-making guardrails. It's like there's the guardrails. You can stay between the guardrails. You can be creative all you want as long as you stay between the guardrails. And as long as we end up at the destination we want to end up at.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Dude, that's great. What would you say is same and different when it comes to, obviously it sounds like a lot of your earlier stuff was all same physical space. And later, it now seems like a lot of stuff you're doing is remote digital space. And I think people get tripped up on this a lot. And so some of the advice I tell people is like, if you don't know how to do this remotely, digitally, just imagine you're in the same room. Imagine you're in the same physical space. How would you answer the question kind of thing? But I'm curious what you noticed making that shift from a lot of it being in-person physical space to remote and digital. What was the same? What was different? What worked? What didn't work?
I think it depends on the people because high performers perform anywhere, whether it's physical, whether it's digital. And if you find that you're having issues with individuals from a web-based perspective or a remote perspective, you have to ask yourself, are they the right people? And have you given them everything that they need to be successful? So that's what I'm learning. I went to 10X 360 with Brandon Dawson, and they talked about as a leader, you have to do the 4 M's first. And the first one is they do mimicking. And so you do the work. You show them how to do it. They mimic you. And then they master it. And so once they begin to master it, well, first is model. You model the behavior. I missed out. You model it. You show everybody how to do it. Then they mimic you. They do what you do. Then they master that. And then they multiply. That means they go out and hire. And so for each individual person, it doesn't matter if you're in person or remote. What I found is the people who don't perform remotely is because they didn't have the right information or they weren't prepared or they just weren't the right fit. And that's okay. A lot of times we want people to fit into our businesses when that's just not them. It's not their skill set. It's not what they want to do. And so again, something else I took from 10S 360 was understanding a person's personal, professional, and financial goals. And you should have that conversation before you hire them. What are your personal, professional, financial goals? And see if your organization or your business can help them realize that. When you can show a person how they can reach their goals within the organization by doing a job, it doesn't matter if they're remote, virtual, physical, whatever, they'll show up every day.
Yeah, man, that's good. What else have you noticed when it comes to hiring? Do you have any like assessments, personality tests, anything like that you like to do ahead of time or that you feel are revealing?
Yeah, so I like to use at a base level the DISC. Most people are familiar with the DISC, especially in the corporate world. DISC is measures your decisiveness, your interactiveness, your stability, and then your compliance. So I like to give individuals a DISC so I know their behavioral tendencies from an external perspective. Now, if I want to go a little bit deeper, I would give them the values assessment because before we jumped on and started recording, you were talking about how in these business operating systems, whether it's scalable, EOS, scaling up, there's always something that doesn't quite work in all situations. So the DISC is the same way. It doesn't quite cross every T or dot every I. A great example is a high D is known to be aggressive. They are determined. They are decision makers, they're problem solvers, they're go get it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are situations where high Ds don't act. And then the question becomes, well, you're a high D, why aren't you solving this problem? Well, if their value for that problem is low, then they're not going to do the work. They don't care. So I'll give you one value is economic. I am a very high economic. That value is like I'm 95 out of 100. That means whatever I do has to have a return on my time, my energy, my investment. Not just money, but all of return. If I don't see the value, if it doesn't meet that, I'm not going to do it. I don't care how dominant I am, I'm just not going to show up. So I like to give the disc. I love to give the values. And then sometimes I will go even deeper and give the attributes assessment. The attributes measures, or it characterizes your order of thought. How do you think? Do you think from an empathy standpoint? Do you think from a practical thinking, meaning hands-on? Or are you a strategic thinker? So you could think of those as your heart, your head, and your hands. And so the culmination of all three of those assessments, I have a person pretty locked in.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. We do something very similar. So I use 3 assessments as well, because I'm like, to your point, like it's not perfect. It doesn't work in every scenario. And I'm trying to, best I can, start to paint a better picture of the whole person, not just this one silo of them. So I use DISC as well. I feel like DISC, like you said, very simple. People are familiar with it, like less friction. I've started using Principles a lot more, which is Ray Dalio's assessment.
Yep.
And he does a great job with some of the visuals and helping people understand like the islands and where they land. And what I like about the Principles is I notice it also gives a little inclination in terms of self-awareness, because what you'll notice is like if people's results are all over the map, it's like, this is weird. Like this doesn't make any sense, right? Versus typically, like they're kind of clustered together, right? When they see like their top 3 results, it's like 2 of them are on the same island and the next one's like right next to it. It's when you get the people that are like all over the place, you're like, I don't know that this guy even knows himself, you know?
Exactly.
And that's usually a big red flag for me is like, man, there's that phrase in coaching, like if I don't know you, I can't grow you. It's like, well, if you don't know you, who's gonna help me clue in on what you need and who you are? And then we'll incorporate the crystallizer, because I do a lot of work with operators. And so then we'll look at that crystallizer to see, and what we typically do is we'll have the visionary take it as well, so that we can do that gap overlap analysis to see, man, where are things going to fall through the cracks? Where are you guys going to step on each other's toes? And more than anything, let's just have a conversation. Let's just put these results side by side and just talk about it. And let's make sure that what you consider a 4 out of 5 is also what I consider a 4 out of 5. To make sure we're speaking the same language. And then let's identify kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to this. And then we try to take it another step further and we say, okay, if we were going to hire another person in the company, let's bring somebody on that fills all the gaps. Right? And so we use that to then say, based on all these things that are gaps, does that look like a job description? Could I literally just put that out there as this is the person that I need to help supplement what's not getting done already? You know, so it's funny. We use 3 as well to kind of get a grasp on that. What would you say when it comes to digital versus physical? Is the last I want to touch on for this is how, well, actually, I think I got 2. How processes work, physical versus digital, because I think there's some nuances there that people, again, get tripped up on. And then what does accountability look like? And we'll go into more on accountability, because I'm sure you'll have a lot to say there. But when it comes to the process side, what do you see physical versus digital and how that kind of plays out?
Yeah, so from a physical perspective, especially if you're working in an office, most places are moving away from physical SOP books. And I remember having binders of this is how you do these things and these manuals, and even in the military, all the just regulations. But now what I see more so is moving away from a lot of processes, SOPs, to checklists. And those checklists or punch lists are shorter. They're easier to digest, and then they have the relevant information, both from a physical and a virtual standpoint. The hard part is for either one of them is making sure that they're followed by all, because you can have all the SOPs and checklists and processes in place, but if people don't follow them, then they're useless. And so it's really educating on why it's important to do this step every single time and how it will actually make your job easier if you do that. So from a physical location standpoint, it is where are we housing this? How do we meet to go over them? Who's responsible for it? Who's accountable for it? And then from a virtual, you really have to create an environment of, again, high standards. And we can get into that a little bit later because I do want to dive into what that means to me of high standard. That way, some of these questions you don't have to even ask because of the people that you associate with.
Yeah, take it.
Okay. So everybody that comes to work with me, I treat them and I tell them, like my partners, 2 of them are ex-military, one is not, and then I'm prior military. So we all have a mentality of Navy SEAL. We want to be the best. And that bar is ever raising. Like there is no, you meet the minimum standard. It is always great job. You could do better. And so everybody that we push through that wants to work with us, you have to have a Navy SEAL mentality. It is a mentality that I'm not just doing the work that I'm paid for. It's the mentality of I want the team to win. I want everybody to go home. I worked in military operations. And so out of some of the work I did, it was life and death. Everything mattered down to the most minute thing that you didn't think. And so we tell people up front, this is the standard. This is how we operate. If I'm working 12 hours, you might work 12 hours. I'm not looking for you to tell me that, oh, it's 8 o'clock, I'm clocking out and it's over. We want a certain caliber of person, and we don't fire anybody. What we do is, as that standard raises, they end up walking away or saying that it doesn't fit, which is perfectly fine for us. Because as we run and move, like you said, I have a lot going on. I'm moving a mile a minute. It's like we are fast paced. I got that from working with ET. We want these things done and done now. You either fit into that or you don't. And so if you don't fit, then the accountability becomes on you because everybody will know it's you. It's like, okay, I know where the ball is being dropped because we threw it to you, ran to something else, and then moved. And so as you work with us specifically, you are held to just such a high standard that's ever going and going and going. You will eventually catch up and keep growing, or you will say, you know what, I want a more relaxed environment and I'll go work over there.
So tell me a little bit more about this. Well, 2-part. I'm curious about the not firing anybody. What does that look like in terms of raising those standards? And then how does that tie into just accountability in general?
Oh, yeah. So again, KPIs, SOPs, decision-making frameworks, processes and procedures are all in place. So when you get brought on, you know what to do, how to do it. I've been recording SOPs since 2014, like video, audio, Google Docs. It's not new. So when you come into the organization, you have everything that you need to be trained on, and we meet weekly. So we're going over what's working, what's not working, what can we do better. As we start to delegate more tasks, because we delegate based on trust, we want to make sure that you do these things. I will start noticing if you miss something. I would say I cross all my T's and dot all my I's. I don't miss much. And so, since I operate fast, I will see it before it becomes a big issue. And I'm like, okay, you missed this, or you missed this, or you missed that. And that is, from an education standpoint, it's like, okay, what can I do to make you successful? What else do you need from me? How can we help you? And so instead of, it's almost like when you're working in the government or corporate, they put you on give you a PIP, performance improvement plan. You get 6 weeks. If you don't, you get fired. Well, when we do a PIP, we put
everybody knows what that is. That's HR compliance for you're on your way out.
Exactly. But what we do is we put so much pressure and the microscope is on you. You either do the work or you say it's not working out. And so I only had to let people go when I feel like they're stealing money. And I don't mean physically taking money from my pocket. I mean, I paid you to do a job. You said you did it. It's not done. and now you want to be paid. So I'm not going to pay you. And you can walk away. So I don't necessarily fire you, but you decide that, you know what, I didn't actually do that work. I'm going to go ahead and walk away because they're not going to let me get by on small mistakes because it matters to our clients.
Yeah, I always tell people like I think everybody in the organization should have a PIP, because the idea that it's a performance improvement plan, everybody should have a plan for improving their performance. And so it shouldn't be this like, hey, it's to get you up to par. It's hey, here's what the next level looks like. And I want everybody interacting in that kind of progression.
Absolutely.
That brings up something that I also want to ask you about. And we talked about this a little bit before we started, but we both have a background in EOS. I think we both agree that it's really a great tool, has a lot of the fundamentals or building blocks that are necessary, but there are a couple gaps. There are a couple areas where it falls short. One of the areas that we've noticed a ton that we just weren't satisfied with some of the tools or resources it provided was leadership development. I'm sure you've come across this as well, but are there any other areas that stuck out to you, or anything around leadership development that you've noticed where it's like, man, this just isn't even there, and we got to add it in. We got to supplement this to some of those building blocks that EOS has given us?
Yeah, I think, maybe the leadership development part, I was thinking about that when you said it, like, why does it have that gap? Because they all came, not they all, but a lot of them came out of Strategic Coach with Dan Sullivan. And so the leadership development component is from Strategic Coach. They could have just taken it and used it. Maybe it's not the point of it. Maybe it is generally just an operating system. And so there are components that they just ignore. I think
almost
that
like a prerequisite, right? It's like,
correct.
oh, we don't even have this built in because we just assume you already have it. Or, hey, this
Exactly.
is the next iteration or the 2.0 version.
Exactly. I think, and to be fair, it's the entrepreneurial operating system. But most entrepreneurial-led companies don't have the capacity to follow the procedures that EOS, or the rigidness. Because if you're EOS pure, it's very rigid on what you can do, what you can say, how you should do it. Like, I give you a great example.
It's been a while since I heard that term, to be EOS pure. And I know what you mean, but for people that don't know what you mean, can you explain that real quick?
So EOS pure means you're following this operating system to the letter and the spirit of EOS. You're not doing anything different. You're not incorporating other tools. You're using their tools, their language, their terminology, following it to the letter. One thing that, and I do it because I have clients that they're running on EOS, they have implementers, so I'm there as their fractional integrator, so I do it too. But one thing that burns my soul is the annual planning and the quarterlies. You know what I lose sitting in one space for 8 hours? It's like, I honestly don't need to be here for 8 hours. I can get what you're trying to get done in an hour or two. I feel like there's a lot of, I have to create something to make this happen. My clients that I have worked with, they're not doing that. And so the EOS, I tried to implement EOS in a couple of fast moving businesses, and it just doesn't work. One, the leadership, they're not sitting on a call for, I don't care if it's an hour. They're like, okay, you got me for 10 minutes. The way, if you're dealing with a lot of contractors versus employees, you can't make the contractors do all of these things. Like, I have clients that have tried to make contractors show up to their quarterlies. It's like, why would I give 8 hours? I don't even work for you like that. And so those were gaps that I saw. When you talk about building traction and your 10-year goal and the 3-year picture and the annuals, those things change so much. I don't necessarily, I think 10 years, 20 years, but I'm not building based on that because, again, I was supposed to be retired officer in the Air Force, but that changed at an instant. And so I don't necessarily subscribe to, let me put down a 10-year big goal and I'm going to map everything out according to that and work my rocks up to that, because things change. And so I think that EOS has a rigidness that is a gap for a lot of fast moving companies. And especially when only 23% of companies have more than 2 employees. EOS isn't built for such small companies. They're built for a team of 5 up to about 250.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that's usually the biggest friction is from the actual business owner, visionary themselves of going like, I keep hearing about this thing. I want the results it offers, but I don't want to participate in that. That sounds like pulling teeth. That sounds awful.
Yeah.
Which is why, so I'm actually hosting an event in January that is for operators and owners, visionaries and integrators to come together. And it's this hybrid between getting your annual planning done while also doing a mastermind. Because what I found was the business owner, the visionary, they want to be around other visionaries.
Yeah.
They want to talk about this is the fundamental split I found, is that they want to talk about the question, what's working? And they want to play pitch and catch and level each other up and say, well, what if you did this? Well, what if we did this? Well, what if you tried this? And like keep amping each other up in this like pitch and catch type of scenario. The operators want to ask the opposite question. They want to drill down and say, what's not working? How do we solve that? How do we fix that? And so right off the bat, there's this tension between saying the visionary doesn't want to go, I don't want to talk about what's not working. And the operator doesn't want to go, well, I don't really want to talk about what is working because we already know it's working. And I don't want to deal in these like hypothetical what ifs. I want something more tactical, more concrete, more committed to. And so
Absolutely.
that's part of the reason we're hosting this event is I've got some clients coming out to it as well that are getting their year-end planning done while also getting to mastermind amongst their peers.
Yeah.
And so the operators get to go, well, how are you solving these problems? And the visionary and the business owners get to say, well, what are you doing that's working? And so it's just putting everybody in a scenario that they actually want to be in to, I think, get more accomplished and then come back together and be on the same page to say, okay, so then what does planning and execution look like going into this year? What are we committed to? I'm curious in that balance, because I think from the conversations that you and I have had, it sounds like you were in a very traditional visionary integrator relationship with ET, but also fast moving, right? Like you said, you got me for 10 minutes. You don't have me for 90 minutes. How do you balance some of that when it comes to a strong visionary and a strong integrator? What are some of those compromises that work well? What are some of the things that are like you're not willing to budge on that, have to happen for that relationship to work?
I think you said a key phrase. You have to have a really strong visionary and a really strong integrator, or else one will railroad the other. Now, my relationships are, and I think when you sit in a certain seat, you need to be prepared and have the skill sets for that seat. So my visionaries, you got ET when I was working with him. I currently work with Master P. We've did some work for Coach Prime. These individuals don't have time. Like, they're moving. All I need is an idea. Hey, I want to launch a mastermind. Hey, I want to launch this website. Hey, we're doing this for this event. Hey, we're giving this award away. Hey, we're building this. That's all I need. I don't need them to brainstorm the vision with me. And so once they tell me the end result, I can build everything else from there. And so I actually my tension with the visionaries were, we didn't finish this before you started something else. No problem. We're going to get it, but you're rolling out way too many ideas at one time. And I think I helped them do that because we were able to execute. Like one of my clients now, when I meet with him, he comes with a Google Doc of stuff. It's like pages of ideas. And he said, but there's never something that I put on here that you didn't knock out or get done. And so I give them the room to be a true visionary and just say, hey, I want to do this and make it happen. A lot of times visionary integrators bump heads either because the integrator's not strong enough and they can't actually complete the work. They don't move fast enough. So they're trying to force the visionary to come to their speed, or the visionary doesn't have enough trust to let it go. So they want to craft the vision and make sure it's happening because they don't believe that the integrator can get it done, or they don't trust them with it. And so my recommendation is just having an honest conversation. For me, it's like, if you want me to do X, Y, and Z, I'm gonna need you to get out of the way. Just like tell me what to do and let it go. I've had instances where I'm with a Master P and he's okay. I'm gonna log into the site and look at it with you. I'm like, I don't need you to do that. just tell me what you want. But on the flip side, I work with Eric. He ain't never looking at it. He might look at it if after it's complete, he say, you know what, I want this to pop. But he's not in the day to day. And I've just had other visionary clients that they want to be in the day to day. They want to know what's going on all the time. They want to put their hands on, like, no. If you want me here, I need you to go over there because you're in my way. And I'll give you this and then I'll walk away and let you come back in. I had a mentor tell me, you have to give the visionary their own sandbox. And so when you tell them you're going to take away their worry, their anxiety, the issues, the problems, you're going to deal with it all, you're going to handle the team, you're going to execute, you're going to make it happen, that leaves a void. And so they're going to do one of two things. They're going to dream up some other stuff to do, or they're going to meddle in what you're doing. So you
I was
have
just
to
thinking that word. They're going to start meddling. They're going to start stirring the pot a little bit.
Yeah, you have to create a sandbox for them and let them play in their sandbox. Back to guardrails. It's strategic. They don't necessarily know that you've created this. Like I would give them, I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? I was thinking about this idea. I'm planting that seed so they can go off and dive into that versus coming around the things that I'm working on. So it's just strategy with knowing who your visionary is and how they operate, and then how you can, I don't want to use the word, I feel like control is strong, how you can maintain their attention.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like give them enough to dig into that feels interesting to them.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. It reminds me of two different, stories, I guess. One is, I think it was Tim Grover was talking about Kobe, and he was saying that it was like scenario where it's like close game, that they're down by a point or something, 10 seconds left in the game, fourth quarter, and coach has drawn up a play on the whiteboard. Everybody's huddled around it, and he puts his hand in and he covers up the whiteboard and he says, give me the ball and get the F out of the way. Yes. And I feel that in my soul sometimes where I'm just like, man, you want me to execute this? Just give me full autonomy and then just get out of the way. And then whatever that deadline is, if it's 30 days, if it's 6 months, if it's as fast as we can, like I'll let you know if I need you. But just get out of the way for right now. Let me cook. I was helping with a mastermind, and I do some of the like facilitating and some of the setup for it. And we were in, this was about a year ago, and we were in Nashville. And we had day one planned, day two planned out. Well, we get there, and day one, it just starts dumping snow. And we had no idea, right? So people's flights are getting canceled, all this. And we've got stuff planned of what we're going to do. Well, over 24 hours, we get like 8 inches of snow, and Nashville's they don't do well with snow. Spoiler alert, if you don't know, they don't do great with snow. And so all the stuff that we had planned for day two, this place is closed. Oh, this place, their workers can't drive to work because the roads are so bad. That place is closed. And so that next morning we had planned, okay, let's reconvene. Everybody will meet up in the conference room that we had. And we'll kind of touch base up there and figure out like internally on the team, what is it we're going to do the rest of the day? And I'm not a big breakfast guy. So it was like, we were kicking off at, I think breakfast was like from 8 to 9 or something. And then we were going to start at 9. So around 8:55, I stroll upstairs, and one of the guys that I work with comes up to me and he's like, where have you been? What are you doing? And I said, you're doing breakfast? Like, I'm not a big breakfast guy. We don't start till 9. Like, I'm good. He goes, no. This guy asked me, what are we doing? And I said, oh, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. What are we doing? And so he had set the precedent of like, oh, we're going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. And he's going, you're not answering your phone. I don't know where you're at. And so he goes, you got 5 minutes. Everybody's coming up here to start another half-day mastermind. And you got 5 minutes to tell us what we're doing. And it was one of those moments where it was like, okay, I need something to write on. And he was holding the coffee. And I was just like, give me that. And I literally took the coffee right out of his hands. And he was like, I had an idea for, I was like, shh, don't, stop. Just give me something to write on. And so it took me, 10 minutes, and I wrote out an agenda of, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go from this breakout to this breakout. And so we were able to pull it off. But it was one of those moments where it was like, okay, just don't talk to me for a second. Just give me the ball, get out of the way. Don't talk to me. I'll get it all done. It's not going to be perfect, but we got something to go off of last minute. And so it reminds me of that story when it's like, just give me the ball, get out of the way. Give me your coffee, get out of the way.
For sure.
We'll figure it out. Oh, man. What do you see when it comes to that balance between, I call it ideas versus issues? Because I think a lot of times, and even sometimes it happens with employees where they're like, hey, I want to talk about, and it's like they want to introduce an idea. They got a little creativity spurring up in them. They're like, I want to talk about this. And, maybe it's in the middle of an L10 where we're going, this is really geared to check in on the progress we're making to the things that we have already committed to. It's not meant to be a brainstorming session. I'll tell you what I've done is we've started creating, I call them parking lots, where we have, it's essentially like your brainstormed like rocks list. And so we have a parking lot for ideas and we have a parking lot for issues. And week in and week out, we're going to talk about the issues. And then depending on the business, either monthly or quarterly, we're going to look at that parking lot of ideas. And so it gives people someplace to put it, to track it, so we don't lose sight of it.
Yep.
But it doesn't become a distraction for the L10 where it's like, hey, I want to talk about this. It's the what ifs. It's like, no, we're not what ifing right now.
Yeah.
But how do you see that tension play out sometimes when it comes to like ideas versus issues?
Yeah, so we don't do that. Like, there's no, if I'm in the meeting, it's like, what does that have to do with this? Oh, it doesn't? We'll talk about it later then. So what we have done is we create innovation teams. And so I encourage my clients to have a separate group of people that they don't have to be full-time. They can be part-time. They can be Upwork contractors, whatever. But you need a researcher, somebody who can do a little bit of biz dev, and maybe someone who has some operational background. And so for any new ideas, like new products, new services, we'll send that idea to the innovation team and let them mull it over outside of us. And what happens is they bring it to me and I look at the viability. So here's how it works in the big picture. Whether it's the CEO, the owner, the visionary, or it's another team member, if they have a unique idea, they will present it to me first. And then I will look at it from a high level. I'm like, okay, you want to start a virtual assistant business? That could be in line. We got a lot of clients asking for it. Okay, sounds good. Push it to the innovation team. When they mock up something, which I'm looking at product market fit, I'm looking at how can we penetrate the current market. When they send it back to me, it takes me like 30 seconds to say, does this fall in line with what we're working on now? Or is this a rock for next quarter? Or if it's non-EOS clients, is this something that we want to tackle? If it looks good, I'll push it forward and they will start working on it, and then we will integrate it into the current structure. But a lot of those, like, I am the decision maker in most of my relationships with my clients.
Almost kind of back to that idea, like integrator is the tiebreaker.
Yep. Everything flows through me one way or the other. And I always tell all the teammates, if the visionary comes around me and creates those inroads, let me know. And so I can go get on the same page with them. So we make sure that we're moving towards that goal, because I also sit and control revenue. And so in every organization, revenue is my thing. Like, they set a goal, we want to make sure we hit the goal. So I measure everything against that.
Yeah, that brings up a great point. Like, one of the things that we talk about in our company is that we don't do operations for the sake of operations, right? I think you and I both, like, we have a background actually doing the work before we started doing the integrator, the consulting, the fractional stuff with other people. And so I think our perspective is a little bit different sometimes than the people who come into operations and their only background is in, they've learned how to implement operations and they've never actually done it themselves. And so we always say, we don't do operations for the sake of operations. We do operations with revenue in mind. Like it's almost this necessary evil where it's like, we're only implementing this foundation so that we can grow revenue and profit. We're not doing it just so that everything feels better and feels controlled or organized. How do you see that play out in terms of mistakes people make maybe when they're trying to implement operations? They're trying to use the playbook, they read Traction maybe or something, they read Scalable or Clockwise or something, and they're trying to implement it and they start to lose sight of that revenue as the end goal.
Yeah, I think the mistake is just bloated systems. You have all of these different pieces that really aren't fully implemented. They get started and then they kind of get to a point and say, oh, that's good enough. Put it to the side. And then I also find that creates the more ideas factor. Okay, we didn't quite hit revenue. What else can we do versus dialing back and saying, what didn't you do in this system to hit this revenue? I like to borrow from Jay Abraham and say, before you go start a new thing, look in a different industry and see what they do that's working for them and how can you apply that thing to your specific industry. When I was talking last night with my partners about Motown and in the 60s, how they brought up all of these great performers. Well, Barry Gordy used to work at Ford. And so the systematic way that he brought in musical groups was like a plant. They went through music training. They went through vocals. They went through dance. They went through lyrics. They went through the band. It was a stopping point, just like in the factory. So he borrowed from something that was working and brought it to Motown. A lot of times we want to create entirely new products, new ideas, new systems. People say, oh, I'm not making a lot of money. Let me implement EOS. Well, is it the right fit? Oh, and why are you implementing it? And do you know the result that you want to get? So that's another key. A lot of people implement systems, but don't know what the result is. They just, I want to be better. Well, what does better mean? Like, what's the number? For me, it starts at a number because revenue is business. Without money, you don't have a business. Without money, you don't even have a nonprofit. Nonprofits don't run on air. They run on money. A nonprofit is a business. Nobody's just taking profit home. So I always start at the number first. We want to do 2.5. We want to do 5. We want to do 10 million this year. Okay, what do we need to do in order to make that a reality? And what systems do we need? What processes? What software? What AI? What people? What human what are all the things we need to make 10 million? And from there, I make sure that the right things are implemented. So when you come up to me talking about, oh, I want to redo HubSpot and do all these things. Okay, how is that going to get us to the financial goal? Oh, it's just going to make our life simpler. Well, is that going to equate to the financial goal? And if you can show me how it moves the needle on the numbers, then I'm more apt to do it.
Yeah. It's that busy versus productive.
Exactly.
Right. I think I was reading this morning, I think it was Patrick Bet-David. He said moving the needle, but people don't even know what the needle's attached to. It's like, that might be oil pressure. I don't know that we want to move that needle, right?
Correct.
All of a sudden now everybody's busy and overwhelmed and overworked. It's like that's not actually the goal.
Yeah. And I'm reading right now by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. 10X is easier than 2X. And so what I'm realizing there is when you set the goal to 10X, not just for saying, I want a 10X, but actually setting that goal, it removes a lot of the what if things. It's like, okay, instead of going from 1 million to 2 million, that's doubling. If I go from 1 to 10 million, what do I actually need to do to hit 10 million? A lot of those ideas are going to fall out because they're not the ones, they're not right. They're not even going to fit. So you can only work from 2 to 3 things that will get you there. So now I'm telling my clients, hey, if you said you want to hit 1 million, say 10 million, and I figure out what do you got to do to get to 10 million. And like Les Brown used to always quote Norman Vincent Peale, if you shoot for the moon and you miss, you'll still at least land on the stars. So if you shoot for 10 million and you miss, you might miss and hit 5, but that's further than the 2 that you were trying to get to in the first place. And so with that lens, people have fewer ideas. Not that ideas are bad, But I think like Jim Rohn used to say, just carry a notebook and write all your ideas down. Keep them somewhere, but it doesn't mean we got to do it right now.
Mm-hmm. When you mentioned the bloated systems, do you ever do any stripping down in the business? I think it's like Elon Musk talks about, we're name dropping a ton right now. He talks about like, you should strip it down enough to where it actually like breaks it and then only add back in enough to make it like functional again when you're looking at a system. Do you ever go through like a stripping down? Do you do that maybe like initially with a client, or do you ever do it seasonally where you're like, hey, every year or 3 years, we need to just kind of audit like, man, have we become bloated and we need to actually strip this down a little?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to name drop. It shows the audience that this information isn't new. Ian and I aren't on here creating new information. It's out there. And the more you read, the more you study, the more you are having your toolbox to be able to pull from and say, you know what, Elon Musk said, try this. Let me go try this. But to answer your question, that's one of the very first things I do. I look at it from a system bloat, software bloat perspective, and also a human bloat perspective. Like I'm looking at the team and I'm saying, do you really need these people? You got 5, 10, like.
It's usually a counterbalance, I notice, right? That like payroll and software stack. It's like some guys will brag about how lean their payroll is, but they got every software tool under the sun, and then vice versa, right? They've got no automation, software, nothing, and their payroll is super bloated because they got everybody doing everything manually.
Absolutely. Payroll is the largest expense for established businesses. And so I work with numerous of clients that have team members that they're not pulling the weight and they're not doing the work. And so I immediately look at that and I'm like, do you really need these people? We need to cut these people. And the money goes up tremendously. And then I look at, okay, what software do you have? What systems do you have? And are you using them? I have clients paying $15K a quarter for HubSpot and use 20% of what HubSpot can actually do. Like, do you really need that? Can we dial back on it? And now, since I sit in the fractional integrator seat, most of my clients have operations managers. I task the operations manager to go and find, how much are we paying for Zoom? Oh, we're paying $900 for large meetings. How many large meetings have we ran in the last quarter where we needed up to 1,000 people? Oh, cut that out. Oh, I remember saving a client probably $2,000 a month just on Zoom recordings because they were storing in the cloud. And when you store over your allocation, Zoom just charges you. They don't send nothing. I'm like, that's a simple click, delete in 30 days. And then we can use a Zap to move it to another place for a longer term storage. We could drop it in Dropbox or somewhere like that. But it's those things that people don't think about that I do think about. And so I'm looking to reduce expenses while we increase our revenue intake.
Oh, that's good, man. Okay, last topic for you. We talked a little bit before we started about this idea of building the system is different than running the system, right? The guy that's going to come in and run the day-to-day, that keeps the train running on time, right? That guy is different than the guy that lays down the railroad tracks and builds the train. I use this analogy from Formula One where you have the team principal is like the visionary, you have the chief designer who comes in and actually implements and builds, and then you have the driver that's going to get in the seat and go out and win races. And a lot of times what people do is they lump the builder and the driver together and they just call it operations. What do you notice when it comes to the difference in skill set? I think is somewhat obvious, right? Of like the building it versus the running it ongoing. But what do you advise or what do you notice when it comes to business owner wants to bring in a good operator? What should they be looking for? And should they be building or hiring someone to build it first, build it in conjunction with, but more than anything, like, what are the skill sets either, I guess you would say that a visionary should be looking for if they want a great operator? And for operators, what are the areas that they should start getting better at, right? What makes the biggest difference of a great, I think, implementer could be one conversation, and a great integrator could be another conversation. But what do you notice that really separates the A players versus the B players?
Yeah. And it's a lot of components to those questions, but
Yeah. Take it wherever you want.
this goes back to the DISC and the values assessment. When people give people the DISC and they see that they're high C, compliance, they follow rules, standards, and procedures, sometimes they notice that that person who's a high C, they're skeptical. They're going to look at everything. They're going to make sure that it's right. They're going to check all the paperwork. If they don't have a system, they don't do so well. And it's like, but you're a high C. You should be able to build a system. And it's not true, because there's a value called the regulatory value, which tells you if you are a person that can build systems or simply operate in systems. So from the gate, if you give those two assessments, you will know who your operator is. Now, that being said, I think a great operator, and this is going to sound funny, is a little bit of a visionary. Not that they're having all the big ideas and dream and prop, but they can see from a vision how to implement it from a visionary standpoint. I said a lot of words that mixed up there, but I'm going to use myself as the example.
Well, it's like it doesn't feel like a foreign language, right? It's like
Exactly.
they understand it enough that when they catch the vision, they catch a glimpse of it, they're bought in, they get it. It's not this foreign language they're struggling to understand the why and how and all the pieces.
Exactly. So me personally, when I hear a vision, I'm able to strategically think about that vision and from a practical standpoint, execute it. You have to have those two skills in order to be a great operator. And so this comes from the values assessment, not the values, the attributes assessment, when we're talking the head, the hands, and the heart. Strategy, practicality, and empathy. So the way I process information is when I hear it from the visionary, I'm like, okay, how do we strategically do this? What are all the ways? Now I'm creating my mini vision within their vision, my vision of execution. From that vision of execution, I pick 3 different ways that we can accomplish this. That's it. I don't need 10 ways to do a thing. I need 3. From those 3 ideas, I think about the impact it's going to have on the client base and then the team internally. So external and internal. From there, we move with the right solution based on that information. If you're lacking any one of those, you probably either need more training or you don't fit in the operator seat. Because, and I also go back to, you need to have the skill of building systems to be a true operator, an integrator, a leader. Now, if you're just an operations manager, then that's the person that drives the car once it's built. The operations manager, operations lead, whatever you want to call them, they're not strategic. They're doers.
Yeah. But I think
And
a
so
lot of these terms get thrown around very loosely. You come into a
Exactly.
business where they've got a COO and the COO doesn't know how to build systems. You're like, and they're like, no, this guy's great. I love him. I trust him, all this. Like, he gets everything done, right? And they're describing, like you're saying, like maybe more of an operations manager, but they've already titled this guy COO in the business. And then they're going, hey, can you help me build some of the systems? And I'm like, well, really, your guys should be doing that. If it's, and not to use too much jargon, right? But it's like, if he is the right guy in the right seat, he would be doing that. And I think part of this is like, it's really trendy right now to go buy a business, hire an operator, and plug them in. And people are just like, oh yeah, that's how I do it. I go buy a business, I plug an operator in, I don't even have to touch it, and I make X amount per year, right? You got some of the Cody Sanchez's of the world that are living this lie. And I think there's a massive void in the actual skill set required for that person to do so. And the one piece they failed to mention of it being a massive luxury to be able to afford the person who can actually do that.
There you go.
You're not hiring the intern to come in and start running the company because they've never done it before. They don't have the playbooks. They don't know how to build it. They don't have the skills. Like, I think a lot of this right now is just a lot of these words get thrown around and people, hey, yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the biggest flaws in EOS is that the words implementer and integrator sound so similar. And guys go, yeah, I need to hire an integrator. And you're like, really? Yeah, I already have the ops guy. I just need to hire an integrator to build it all. And you're like, I think you mean implementer, but I don't want to correct you and tell you you're wrong. But like, okay, like the word doesn't matter. We understand what we're trying to accomplish, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's a huge issue right now is that people are
Yeah.
throwing around these terms and they don't actually know what they mean.
Right. And to your point right there, I am 100% okay with people not liking me about and how I communicate. I will tell a person very quick that you don't know what you're talking about. You're not running a real business. Having the luxury of going through the military, government contracting, corporate, I understand all the levels of business. The gap is most of these are entrepreneurs who are sole props that are trying to build teams, but they have none of the business background. Now, I'm not saying that you got to go out and get an MBA. I think you should. I think it helps. But if you're not going to have an MBA, you need training. And that is why there's confusion in the marketplace because they don't know how real businesses operate. You got to look at, like I tell people all the time, look at a Fortune 500 business and start modeling your company after that. Because if you want to scale, that's what you have to be. It can't be what you think. And most people don't want to do that. And they're chasing Instagram. They want to, like you said, I'm going to buy it because, this all over the place now. I'm going to buy a business, throw an operator in there. It can be remote. I'm never going. That takes a lot of work. And if you don't like that person that's the operator needs to be a true operator in that industry, understanding that business. The thing I would do is promote someone from within, somebody that's been a manager in that business for 20 years and elevate them before I go bring in somebody new. But they're not thinking about that because the internet gurus are telling them you can do it with no cash out of pocket. It's the next best thing. Yeah, try that and see. They're going to burn down so many businesses. But you know what, Ian, that's good for me because I'm going to be up there just snapping them up. And so you ruin that business, we can take it over and actually make it work. And to your other point, going back to personal, professional, financial goals, if you knew how much it costs, I don't know how many people come to me and like, I want you to come and work in my business. I'm like, okay, it costs, this is the level of investment. Oh, that's a lot of money. How much do you think a COO is worth? I want my full billable rate. Like I want the fully qualified rate. I want my hourly rate. I want my fringe benefits. I want my stock options. I want my health insurance. If you're not putting all those numbers together, you think you can't pay somebody $40 an hour to do a job. No, you need to be ready to pay this person $250, $300K to run this business the way it's supposed to be. And they're just not even prepared for that. And I think that's another gap in all of these smaller operating systems is they're not teaching you what a corporate business looks like. They're trying to keep you in the entrepreneurial mindset, but that's not sufficient for building a big business. Yes, you can go from 0 to about 10 million with that mindset. When you cross from 10 above 8 figures, it's an entirely different ballgame.
Yeah, it's the lip service of the entrepreneurs that want to hear entrepreneur stuff. And so they're trying to keep them happy. And I think in general, entrepreneurship has kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to anything corporate. And we don't need metrics, we don't need KPIs, we don't need managers. And then, like you're saying, they hit this ceiling and they're like, gosh, why can't we grow beyond this? It's like, well, remember all those things that seem to work over here in the big businesses? Maybe it wasn't all corporate and stuffy and bad. Maybe some of it actually was on purpose and tactical and allows you to grow beyond this benchmark.
KPIs, that's boring. I don't like numbers. I'm like, well, how do you like money? It's like, I don't understand it. Real estate investors, another prime candidate for that. They just want to flip houses. I just want to be on a yacht. I just want to tell people that I got this big check. Well, you got $100,000 check, but your expenses was $150. So Ian, I literally know people out there. They were supposed to be flipping all these houses. They selling Gucci belts. They doing it. Like, I look at that type of stuff. If you're really doing the business, show me the business. Show me the numbers. My early mentors all did that. They was like, we don't go off of fluff. You got to show me the HUD one. Now it's the auto statement. Let me see your tax return. Oh, I ain't did my taxes in 3 years. Well, you're not a legitimate business, sir. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. I've been using this reference to Robert Kiyosaki in the cash flow quadrants. He talks about that difference of the solopreneur, that is self-employed, who owns a job, versus the business owner that owns a system. And that difference
Right.
of, do you own a system? Well, then you are handcuffed to your business and will forever be, until we can replicate you via a system. We can get the information and the decision-making principles out of your head and start to create those guardrails so that somebody else can do it.
I like Roland Frazier for this. He said that with that, because going from Robert Kiyosaki to Michael Gerber with the E-Myth, we go from operator to owner. And then most people want to stay the business owner. They want to look at the system, manage the system, build all of that. But Roland Frazier talks about looking at yourself as the investor. So the business is just an asset. Most people want their business to be their baby. Oh, I love my baby. But if you have an investor mindset, then you look at the business outside of you. It's not even you. It's, what is this system that can stand alone without my presence? Then you're looking at numbers and KPIs, because as an investor, you want a return on your investment. You're not necessarily caught up in the day-to-day and people's feelings and their emotions and team. Not that these things, don't get me wrong, not that any of these things are bad. But as an investor, I'm not necessarily looking at all those pieces. I entrust that to great people, not myself. So even for me personally, I have started looking at business from an investor standpoint. Is this worth my time and my energy? How can I elevate myself even more? What are the pieces I need to put into place that I'm not operating? Because I go from an operator, okay, now I'm an owner. As an owner, I'm delegating. So I'm still in the business. You're not necessarily be on the business. Roland Frazier said, be above that and sit in a true investor standpoint where you own certain aspects, but you're not deeply tied in day to day. And I think if we look at it from that perspective, we can kind of move and really, really understand what business is for anyway, which is just to give you income that you can go and diversify to something else.
Dude, we could talk all day about this stuff.
For
But I
sure.
think that is a good transition. Tell me what's going on with Legacy Wealth Capital Group. I know you got an event coming up March of next year. But tell me a little bit about, because it sounds like Legacy Wealth Capital Group is more in that investor mentality.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about that, what you got going on, and then also tell us about the event you got coming up.
Yeah, for sure. So Legacy Wealth Capital Group is a company that I joined forces with other venture capitalists. And what we realized is most businesses don't get the capital they need to survive. And so they go out of business. You know, we know the SBA, 80-90% go out of business in the first year or two. Only 30% last 10 years. And most of that is lack of funds. And so what do they tell you? They tell you to go borrow money from a bank. If you don't have great credit, you get denied. They tell you to bootstrap. That means you got to work a 9-to-5 to put all the money into the business until it can grow. And then they start telling you, well, just sell more, sell. But that's exhausting. We don't raise capital and go get money from investors like all of these other billion-dollar companies have done before. Somehow we miss that is a thing. So Legacy Wealth Capital Group sole purpose is to share that information with individuals to say there is another way. And if I say so myself, there's a better way. Why not go and raise capital for your business and grow it that way? And Ian, it's like, it's been right in front of us. How many people actually put their own money into a real estate deal? They go get hard money. They go borrow it from family and friends, but they never think that in a business they could borrow that money. And so some of the services that we offer in Legacy Wealth Capital Group is the Capital Raising Academy. It's teaching you about how to raise capital, how to talk to investors, how to formulate a pitch deck, all the regulations that you can use to raise capital that were passed in 2014 with the Jobs Act. So we're talking about Regulation CF, which is crowdfunding. So I can get a Regulation CF, I can raise up to $5 million in a year, and I can put it on the internet and say, hey, look, I got this business. You want to come, similar to Kickstarter. You want to come invest in my business? Here's some shares. The other part of that is we are doing managed business services. So your fractional integrators, your fractional COOs, CMOs, fractional HR, and we're doing business managed services. So taking the fractional seat and the digital marketing company that I have, we're rolling that into it. So we're going to scale businesses through marketing, paid ads, funnels, websites, all those great things. And
is
how
that
we're
all
going to get
internal to you, or are you playing the marketplace of matching, fractional CMO out here wants to get into this and you help match them up with an existing client, or you're bringing them in-house, they work for you, and it's your team, like at a C-suite level, that you're deploying into these businesses?
Great question. All in-house. Now, that
Okay.
may be a relationship with someone external, but they
Sure.
won't leave the nest, so to speak. It's all under one conglomerate, because the goal for us is to take this company public, and we're going to do our own IPO. We got a 5-year timeline to get there. And so we want to go public and be on the stock market like all these other big companies and make a whole lot of money doing so. And so the way we're getting the word out is to do live events. And so individuals can come to the event, they can learn more about us, and then they can learn about how these companies actually raise capital versus seeing Elon Musk raising $6 billion. Elon Musk, he's the richest man in the world, but he's raising money for his ventures. It should click in somebody's mind to say, this is how they do it. They don't spend their own money. They raise the capital to do so. And so March 28th, 29th, we'll be in Charlotte, North Carolina for our first inaugural event. And we're talking about capital raising. We're talking about business operations. We're talking about digital marketing. We're talking about people. We're talking about scaling. And when you walk away, you will be able to put all those pieces together to take your business to whatever the next level is for your business.
You said it's March 28th and 29th?
Yep.
Out in Charlotte?
Absolutely.
Well, how do people find that? They go to legacywealthcapitalgroup.com?
They can go to events.legacywealthcapitalgroup.com.
Awesome. Would you say that'd be good for real estate investors raising capital to send even like their
Absolutely.
investor relations rep to?
Absolutely, because from a real estate standpoint, you're dealing with hard money a lot of times, or if you have good enough credit, you may go to the bank. But a real estate investor can use a Regulation CF crowdfunding, and they can raise capital from a wider net of individuals on just a debt perspective and raise that money and pay it off. And it's more people. It's almost like a syndication, but you can use different regulations. So if you want to deal with accredited investors only, you might do a Reg D 506C. That's unlimited capital raise, and you can market to the general public, because that's the thing. You can't get on, you're not supposed to get on social media and say, hey, Ian, I got this project I'm raising capital for. You want to be a part of it? That's a no-no for the SEC. But if you have the regulations, then yes, you can do that depending on which one. And so that's the education that people need to have, so they can say, you know what, I need $10 million in my business. I want to push it out to an audience. I want to use ads and emails and things like that to reach people. Well, you can do that. You just have to make sure that you are compliant.
Okay, so events.legacywealthcapitalgroup.com to buy a ticket for that March 28th and 29th event in Charlotte. Where are you guys staying in Charlotte?
We are at the Sonesta on the lower south end.
Okay, nice. And then where do people find you if they want to follow along with what you got going on, services you guys provide? Obviously, I know they can go to legacywealthcapitalgroup.com, but where do they find you on social media? Where do you normally hang out, post stuff, provide value?
Yep. So all major platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, at Legacy Wealth Capital Group. If you just look up Legacy Wealth Capital Group, you will see us. We go live every Thursday night at 7:30, where we're just chopping. We're just talking shop. We're telling stories. We're talking about the old venture capital days versus what we're doing now. We're talking about raising capital. We're breaking down businesses and showing how they raise capital. Last night, we talked about DoorDash and how when DoorDash IPO, they went from being valued at 3.9 billion to being worth, I want to say 79 billion. But get this, Ian, their first profitable quarter came Q3 of 2024. They IPO'd in 2020. So they hadn't been profitable. That's another thing that these companies, you don't have to be profitable to raise capital. You just have to have the vision and the story and to lead the investor on a journey. But yeah, they just got profitable.
Crazy.
But the owner's a billionaire.
Yeah, right. The whole new world of like, I simplify it down to like, imagine how valuable the email list is, right? Because that's really what they're selling is their subscriber base. Is I own these people as subscribers. I own their information, their data. And that's what's showing up on their balance sheet. That's creating value is that in terms of lifetime value or MRR, like we can track and we can see the trend of how long we're keeping clients for, what we're making off them, and then the snowball effect of like at some point this is going to hit a tipping point where the value is going to be through the roof. But you got to survive cash wise to get there.
Exactly. Uber, same thing. Amazon wasn't profitable until AWS came out. Like they're all in the same boat.
They're in the same business, yeah.
And we're not taking advantage of it when we can be.
Awesome. Good stuff, dude. Thank you so much. I mean, we were on here for over an hour, but like I said, I feel like we could go back and forth on this stuff for forever. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge and your wisdom. Any final thoughts to close out?
Since we're going into a new year, and it doesn't matter whenever this airs, if you're listening, set your goals. That's the number one thing that most businesses don't do well is they don't set a goal. It's just, I'm trying to do something. I want to do something, but really, really put a number on it and 10x that number. And so once you have that tangible item, whether it's 10, 20, 30, and I want you to think 150 million. I want you to think more than what it's got to feel impossible to you. When you do that, you will start to become a new person. And that is the person that's required to live the life of your dreams. You won't be able to do it with being who you are today. And the only way to become a new person is to set a goal that can only be reached by a new person. So I don't even think in like numbers of like people come to me and they're like, I'm trying to make 6 figures. I'm like, talking to the wrong person. Not enough. 7 figures, you can make that in your sleep. Come to me when you want to make 100 million, 125 million, when you want to be a billionaire, because I see the trajectory and the path, and it's not as hard to do as you think it is. So set goals, big goals, huge goals, and fight for everything tooth and nail.
So good, man. Do you recommend people do that personally and then in the business, or in the business and then personally?
I would say in the business, because you need an external factor to move the internal being. Now, there are some people who are just high performers naturally, and then they need something external to dial in on. So really look at who you are, self-awareness, and then figure out what is it that you need, because I need that big lofty goal for me to get out of who I am every day. Other people may need something a little bit different. But as you look within yourself, I did an exercise, and I know we're supposed to be getting out of here. I did an exercise years ago where I reached out to the 10 closest people to me, and I asked them, how do I bring and add value to your life? And they listed all the characteristics, and I took those things, and that's what I started honing in on. So hone in on your skills, and then get around other people who are going to drag you out from where you are, and then push you to be greater than what you are.
So good, man. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your insights. Thank you for being on here, and we'll touch base again soon. I'm sure people, if they want to follow you, will track you down on Facebook, Instagram, reach out to you, or they will go to legacywealthcapitalgroup.com. But again, Tyrus, Thank you so much for the time, man. This was great.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, if you are looking for help implementing operating systems in your business, you can go to myopsacademy.com. Or if you're a real estate investor looking to do the same, you can go to rei-bos.com to accelerate the learning curve up your operator, as well as build out the actual operating systems in your business. We cover everything from leadership development. We have an in-house CFO advisor, and then we build out your systems, your playbooks, your operating system, and accelerate the learning curve of your operator along the way. So again, you can go to myopsacademy.com, or if you're a real estate investor, you can go to rei-bos.com.